Sisterly love can be a very complex issue, especially if you're constantly being compared to one another. And this is something that Dannielle Miller knows all about. After years of being compared and sometimes criticised for not being as successful as her sister Kylie, despite this negative press, Danny has revealed in her new autobiography that there is no competition between the famous siblings and that their love and admiration for each other is stronger than ever. So, for the rest of us and families, how do you balance sisterly relations? Author Dannielle Miller joins us, and of course Roshan is still here. Dannielle, welcome again.
Good morning.
What is the cause in normal real families, the biggest cause of conflict between sisters, for starters?
Yeah, I think particularly with young girls, they've been encouraged from very young to buy into that compare and despair game that all girls tend to get caught in.
But who starts that, though?
Look, often it's part of popular culture, that who's hot, who's not, who's in, who's out, ranking. But often too, parents, if they're not careful, can inadvertently set up competition by comparing their daughters, saying things like, look, why aren't you as smart as your sister? Or, your sister never gives us this type of trouble. It's really destructive, because that relationship should be one that is, I guess, sacrosanct. And my sister and I were only 12 months apart growing up. Even though there perhaps were comparisons from time to time.
Oh, how cute is that picture?
We are adorable. I was a very bossy big sister, I must confess. But even
it's your fault, really?
Yeah, well, look, I think...
Time to fess up now, Dannielle. It's all right.
I think the thing with Chantal and I was that although we were only 12 months apart and sometimes comparisons would be made externally by teachers and things like that, with her and I, similar to with Danny and Kylie, we were always really close and tight. And in fact, it was us sort of against the world, us against our parents. We didn't buy into any of that, and I think that's really wonderful. And if we can encourage our children to keep that bond,
but being only 12 months apart, I think, is important. Now, Roshan, you're 11. You have a 7-year-old sister, Rani. Did I get that right?
No, Rajna.
Rajna, sorry. How do you feel about there's you and your sister? How do you feel about your sister?
Yeah, it's fun having a sister. Yeah. She loves making practical jokes.
Ooh.
She's a joker, yes. She hides behind walls or in a room, and then she jumps out and scares you. It's really funny, and I got scared once, so I got really scared.
And I think the interesting point there is that it is really imperative to try and find something that they can have in common, whether it be brothers and sisters or sisters, whether that be a sense of humour or a shared interest. I know in my family, one of the things that I introduced to help all of the children get along, because they're very different in ages, was rabbits. So we just got pet bunnies recently, and that was really great.
So it was a common denominator.
Yeah.
How far apart are your kids?
I've got an 11-year-old little girl. I have my partner has a 15-year-old daughter, Jazz, and my little boy is 8. So they all have this common bond with the rabbits, and they look after those together. And even though we recently had some bunny casualties, that in itself was actually...
The bunny died.
We had 2 bunnies that went walkabouts, but the interesting thing about that...
Careless.
No, it was the puppy's fault. But the interesting thing about that was...
It's getting worse, Dannielle.
We've got 2 dogs, 2 bunnies and a turtle. But the interesting thing about that was that even in that tragedy, the girls in particular, because it was their bunnies that went walkabouts, bonded even more so, really, because they had that...
Loss of.
Yeah, they did. And there was much tears and reflection on how cruel life can be.
What do you share? What's... the best thing, what do you share that you're most proud of, that you enjoy most with your sister, Roshan?
That we get along really well, and we like the similar stuff, and if we disagree with something, we don't really mind. Like if she likes something, I don't like something, we don't mind. Like it's not a competition or...
That's nice.
Yeah.
I got to say, when I read part of Danny's book, it said, Danny, this is in her quotes, the only time I saw my name in print at some stage was when it was mentioned on TV and radio as the less successful Minogue, and things like Danny's bitter jealousy over Kylie's continued success, Danny's faux pas, Danny's tragic, and she said, but she never ever felt jealous. I've got to say, that's a good big sister, a good little sister.
And also probably some great parenting, I'd imagine, went into that as well. I know Elizabeth Broderick, our Human Rights and Sex Discrimination Commissioner, and I have spoken about the sisterhood bond. She has a twin sister. And one of the things that her mum did that I thought was really clever was sent them to separate schools. And that way they both had an individual identity and the comparisons were minimised. Interestingly, they both went on to be school captains of their respective schools, which
but
of
you
course
had that
couldn't have
separation.
happened.
Well, my sister was a few years older, so therefore that age, I think, sort of had some issues because I was always the annoying little sister. I was
Find that hard to believe,
very much the annoying, and she was the smart one. She's the academic, and I was the dummy. So you know, we always had these issues going on, but we get along so well now. Okay, on that note, Dannielle, thank you very much. I thought it was an important issue and a very good contribution. Thank you very much for that, Roshan. You'll be staying with us, Dannielle. We'll see you very shortly.
Pleasure.